the recording.
This meeting is being recorded.
So, good day to everyone. Today it is almost like semi-final because we are on the 9th topic. So the next Sunday will be the 10th topic. So that way we will be covering all the 10 elements of project management. So today, as you can see from the slide, is the slide being shared? Can you see?
Yes.
Okay, good. So today we'll be covering the procurement, how to manage procurement in a project environment. Now, procurement is very critical for a project manager because based on the resources that you procure and you deploy, the project gets fulfilled with its quality on time and within the cost. So therefore, procurement is something which is very important for us to learn as a project manager. Now, there are 5 elements of the procurement competency that we learn in project management. So the first one is the requirement. That means you should be able to determine what you need to procure. If you procure more, then obviously you're wasting. If you procure less, obviously it's not adequate to deliver your project. So therefore, it is important that we learn how to procure or how to create the requirements for the procurement. Once we've got all the requirements, then basically we need to establish what is the agreed process for procuring these requirements. So this is about understanding the process and having a process to procure each and every items that we plan to procure. The next one is conduct the activities, the actual activities to procure what you need to procure. So those are the activities. And the fourth one is essentially, therefore, the implement the procurement process. And while you implement, you also monitor and control whether the procurement is being done as it is required to be done. And the last one is once the project is over, you need to finalize all the process of procurement. Suppose you have procured something extra or you kept something contingency, obviously you need to send it back, or if you can salvage those ones. So therefore it will be easier for you to reduce the cost or get some money back. And also the management of the contractors or the suppliers or the vendors, what do you do when the project is over and the procurement is completely complete? So these are the 5 competencies. So basically we will quickly have a couple of slides to see what are the requirements, what are the processes, and what are the activities, and how to monitor, control, and finalize. So let's see the first one, which is the requirement analysis. Now, we have already learned during our cost and time that we estimate the cost or estimate the time based on the work breakdown structure. Now, the same work breakdown structure will also help you in terms of creating the analysis, what you need to procure. So this is a familiar chart that normally when you break down the project, you will see there are 4 levels. The first one is the overall overview of the project. The next one, you divide the project into very broad, if I may say so, work packages or phases. And then the phases can be broken down into the work packages, and the work packages do have tasks. So basically, just for a quick example, if the construction of a 2-story building is the project, then you have phases which are foundation phase, ground floor phase, first floor and the roof, Within the foundation, you will have the earthwork and the structure, and within the earthwork, you will probably have excavation and say termite proofing. Now, at the bottom level, at the task level, is where you will be able to establish what you need to procure to carry out the excavation. For example, to carry out the excavation or digging for the foundation, you will need digging equipment. So you will write against excavation a task that I need a digging equipment. Then you will write for excavation, I will also need some bags. For example, if I'm taking um, some earth out, maybe I will put them into bag and sell them off somewhere else, or probably store it separately so that I can use it again. Similarly, for excavation, you will need some people, you need some contractors. So what happens is that the requirement analysis is carried on based on each of the tasks. So what you do is you create an Excel sheet. In the Excel sheet, you write all the tasks which are at the bottom level here. And for each of the tasks, you write what are the labor requirement, what are the equipment requirement, and what are the material requirement. And then you can write, I need, maybe 4 laborers to work for 7 days to dig. Then I need one probably excavator for 7 days. I need a dumper maybe for 7 days. And then I will need some material. For example, when you are excavating, then probably you need to keep do some retaining wall so that whatever you're excavating, the walls don't collapse and the hole that you're creating where you will pour cement and concrete are not not broken down into um, you know into the right square that you need to have the excavation done. So what has happened for one Excel sheet, one row, one task, you have got labor, you've got materials, and you've got equipments. That way, you will have a complete list of all the tasks, and all the tasks will give you how much of material, what kind of equipment, and how many people for what type of people. So that's what you do in terms of the requirement analysis. Now, once you've done the requirement analysis, so basically now you have to procure each of these materials and equipment, and therefore you will have to go for a process. So the next slide is about one slide for the entire process. The process is very simple. You plan for procurement. For large projects, you actually tender. For small projects, you go for expression of interest, or basically you just ask for simple, what should I say, simple emails saying that I would like to I like to tender, or I like to participate in the project, or I want to supply some of the materials. So whichever type of project it is, based on that you will have a tendering process. And once that is being done, then obviously you will have to administer and manage the contract, because at the end of the tendering process you have actually given it to someone to manage the task, and therefore you will have to administer and manage those processes. And then I mentioned already, at the closing stage there are important activities carried on. Normally always you will have extra sands and extra cement and extra tiles and extra whatever is required. Definitely you would like to return those ones and get some money back. And also the team, you need to actually tell them what they need to do next. And especially for the contractors, all the invoices and bills will have to be paid off. From the project management perspective, at the closing, you will probably settle all the disputes and archive everything. So this is a one slide which captures the entire process, And there's a 4-stage process which you can see the details. During the planning of the procurement, you basically plan what to purchase, how to purchase, whom to purchase from, and the whole plan for the purchase itself. Similarly, in terms of the conduct, the procurement process, so I spoke about the inviting for the tenders, that means the bids and proposals. Then you need to find out what are the criteria you will use to select one or not select someone else. So that those criteria are very important for you to understand. So the criteria could be, for example, who gives the best cost or who gives the best quality. But at the same time, this criteria is important because you have to give equal opportunity for all the people who tendered, and especially if it is a government tender, it's a large project tender, you cannot really be seen as not providing equal opportunity to everyone. And therefore, it has to be a fair process, and therefore you will use a criteria and share that with everyone. The next one is, after applying the criteria, you will have selected the supplier or the vendor, and then the last activity will be how to award the contract. All these are to be done by the project manager. Okay, now this contract administration part, which is a pre-project start, is a very important task, and therefore you need to learn. Procurement itself is a full course. Okay, there's so much of complications involved and complexities involved in procurement process and the administration that it's a full course. But today I'm just going to give you in one slide the whole process so that you understand what is involved. Now, once the project is in flight, which means the project now has started. So that point of time, the suppliers and the vendors will start performing. So you need to manage those contractors. You have to manage those equipments or the laborers or the staff. And therefore, everything that you procured in the implementation stage, you will monitor and control. Most importantly, what you do is you control the contracts. The contract has got many clauses. So manage the relationship with the supplier and make sure that they are performing as per the clauses. And then if there are any changes or any variations are required, then how do you manage those changes and how do you approve those variations or reject those variations? So that is the contract administration. So these two are very critical and specific and specialized knowledge that a project manager do have of how to contract administer and contract manage. And of course, I talked about the closing, where at the end, what the activities that you carry out, make sure the project, no disputes, all the claims are settled, everything is archived, all the goods and materials have gone back from where they came from. There's no inventory left, unless you want to keep some inventory for some strategic reasons. So what we have learned now is basically the process of procurement: plan, tender, administer, manage, and close. Having said so, then the next one is, I think someone is joining in. Yeah, the next one is basically that in the planning stage, therefore, what we do. 3 major activities we do in the planning stage. First is, you as a project manager will decide, will you buy these items that you need, or will you manufacture, if you have facilities to manufacture yourself? Okay, so this is called make versus buy decision. Then the next one you will do is select the right source from where you will buy or procure these goods or these materials or these equipments. And the third one is, in the planning stage, you will write a complete procurement management plan. So let's see each of them. So the first one is make versus buy. So how will you choose whether to make or to buy? That will be based on cost benefit, the risk reward, and some strategic choices. Now let's get an example. For example, your Toyota company, you're manufacturing car, or it's a project for delivering a new car. Now you have the capability of, you know, having the engine manufactured in Toyota Japan. You have the capability of having the tires manufactured, maybe batteries or the cranks or the gears. But when you are doing a business, say in Australia or maybe in India, that time you can decide whether you will make in a Japanese factory, ship it to India or to Australia, and then assemble everything and then deliver the Toyota car. Or you have the option of outsourcing it to an say Indian company who could be called as the original equipment manufacturer. Under your license, under your specifications, they can actually procure, but that's not your company. But you can buy those engines or those batteries, those tires, those whatever gears from that company, and then just assemble as Toyota India Limited. Okay, so in that case, you will decide whether to make or the buy based on what is the cost that you will incur and what is the benefit you will get. For example, if you're shipping from Japan, you will not only incur the cost of manufacturing, but also you will cost of the transportation, clearance, storage, and there could be damages involved. So all these will be part of the cost, and therefore, as against that what's the benefit? The benefit could be your ownership, your control of the right quality of engines that you're sending. So these are the benefits. So you will do a cost benefit analysis. So any project, you will do cost benefit analysis of make versus buy. Similarly, risk versus reward. What are the risks versus what are the rewards? And I talked about the strategic choices. Sometimes the strategic choices could be like you want to support a partner. You are a part of a conglomerate. For example, your iPhone, your Apple. So you have specific partners who delivers the Carl Zeiss lens, specific partners who delivers very high quality batteries, okay, specific partners who delivers high-end chips, someone who's giving you the glass or the cover. Now, you might decide to support those partners because that's the reason they are in alliance or strategic alliance with you. So these are called strategic partnership. So you will use make versus buy also based on your obligation to your strategic partners. Similarly, you might choose to make or buy based on the quality that is assured. If you think this supplier, which is an original equipment manufacturer of the Toyota engine in India, can provide the quality and assure the quality, you have no issues of buying from them. But if you have question mark, in that case, probably because of the quality assurance, you will not buy, but you will make those engines in Toyota in-house and then fit into your cars. And then of course there are future proofing. It's not only managing your partners and your suppliers and strategic partners today, but you want to future proof that when something really goes wrong, they will be part of your cohort who will always support you. Otherwise, what will happen is, if you have to be very opportunistic today, when you need your partners tomorrow, there could be a war situation, there could be, calamities and floods, and so those partners will leave you and go because there is no loyalty. So you might just build loyalties, and based on that, you will actually give them the order to be your preferred supplier. So that's called future proofing. So now we've got some idea about how to make a decision make versus buy of you being a project manager. The next one, we have seen that you will conduct in the planning process the source or the criteria for selecting the suppliers. There are certain things that you need to understand here, that many companies, especially you're working for government and or large organizations, they will already have preferred suppliers or preferred vendors. How they have the preferred vendors list, that's up to them. But normally the preferred vendors is because you have worked with them in past and they have been loyal, they have given excellent quality at a very good price, and they are actually experts in what they do. So there could be many reasons why we have categorized them as preferred vendors. So you as a project manager will first go and ask for a list of preferred vendors. So when you're thinking of which source to buy which item, so you will see which are the preferred vendors. The second categories of vendors are called pre-qualified or pre-qualified vendors. What is pre-qualified? That means the qualification has been already validated prior to your project, and therefore they are put into a list of pre-qualified vendors, something like shortlisted. So whenever you want, you just go to them and say, okay, you are already pre-qualified, I'm allowed to buy from you, and therefore I'm placing this invoice for you to supply me this goods. Why, as a project manager, you use preferred and pre-qualified vendors? Because it's faster, it's easier, it's been time tested, it makes your life easier, and you know those people haven't created much disputes in past. Those people have been supportive to you and your organization, so it's easier. So risk reward, the reward is much more and the risk is very low. So that's how you go to these ones. But when you don't have these ones, then you go for the normal tendering process. Now you know all the tendering process. For large contracts, there will be newspaper advertisements, there will be forms given. People will actually take those forms and take the entire requirement from you in dossiers. Those documents could be, a couple of pages to maybe hundreds of pages. And then they will put the tender on the specific day and before the specific day in a sealed envelope to you. So why do you do tendering? You do tendering because it's called market testing. What is market testing? Testing the market where I can get the best quality at the best price. So that's the tendering process. And then lastly, we talked about the strategic choices. There are some more details, 1 to 14 I have given here, which you can read later in terms of what are the criteria that you use for selecting a supplier. The last one in the planning stage is therefore to write a procurement management plan. Now this is very important. We talked about documentation. Project managers' number one skill is being able to write 10 separate documents which are called management plans. So cost management plan, time management plan, quality management plan. So similarly here, procurement management plan. If you can write 10 such documents of all the 10 functions of a project manager, basically you have already become a project manager, because if you can plan, you can execute. Because in the plan you will write how have you planned, how will you implement, how will you manage the changes, how will you manage the variations, how will you communicate, and how will you close. So therefore, one of the requirement of any project manager is basically documenting the plans. So therefore, in the planning stage for the procurement purpose, you will be documenting the plan for procurement. So this template here is given here. These you can read at your leisure time, because the slides will be available to you. The video of this lecture will be also available to you. So therefore, you can read in your own time, and then you will create a document. It's just a cover page of a book kind of a thing, it will have a couple of pages, so you can write this document. Once you've done that, basically your planning is over, and the end of the planning phase for procurement happens when this document that you've created is essentially gone to the sponsor or the client and they've signed it off. Once they sign it off, you know that you have got document, and these documents are basically documents for approval. This is a plan for how to procure, and that should include the selection process, the change process, the variation process. Okay, so what we have learned is basically in the planning stage, you as a project manager, you will have skills to decide make versus buy. You will have the skills to source from the right vendors based on pre-qualified or preferred vendors or through a tendering process. And the last one is basically you should be able to write a document called project management plan, which should be given to the client or the sponsor. And once this is signed off, you have done very, very well as the up to the planning stage of the procurement process. So what is the next step? The next step in procurement is actually implementing this procurement that you have planned and then monitoring whether everything is going as per plan or not. So therefore, in the implementation stage, I'm going to bring two important activities that you as a project manager will undertake. First is creating a contract, the contract between you and the vendor, contract between you and the supplier. That's a legal aspect. Therefore, you need to understand a little bit the legal aspect of contract and some of the details of the contract document, the legal document that I will show you in the next slides. And also in the implementation or during monitoring and control, you will need to know a little bit of contract administration and contract management. So let's go to the next slide, which talks about what are the legal basis of contract or the agreement. So legal basis of contract in any country in this world is called Contract Act. It comes from the Contract Law, Contract Act. The Contract Act, the principles normally is same all over world. Okay, there are little variations or finer changes, but the fundamental for the law, fundamental for the act is basically that a person A will have to offer a product or a service, and the person B will have to accept. Only when A has offered and B has accepted, we have progressed towards a possible agreement. But it's still not complete. The activity or the fulfillment of the contract is not complete unless there is a consideration which has been exchanged. So what is this consideration? The consideration is basically normal. It is money. You will say, vendor A will say, Larsen and Toubro will say that I'm going to give you equipment called a crane or another equipment called a dumper, which you will be using for your project. And you as a project manager, you are accepting that offer and you say that, okay, I am accepting this for a consideration of 100,000 rupees or $100,000. And then L&T accepts that, and then the contract is complete because there is an offering being made, there is an acceptance of the offering, and a consideration has been agreed upon or it has been changed hand. Okay, but still it is not a complete by law, because there is a last element which says that all these contracts should not violate what is called the common law. If you violate any common law, the contract is null and void. The contract is contract cannot have a legal validity. So what are these common laws? For example, two person can decide. Person A decides that, okay, look, I don't want to live any long. I want to get killed. Okay, and goes to B and say, okay, I'm giving you consideration, just shoot me. Okay, so all first three has been agreed upon. The A has offered, B has accepted, and a consideration has been exchanged. But this cannot be a legal contract because it violates the common law, the protection of human rights and the human life. Okay, so just I'm making it a little dramatic for you to understand that if any of the principles of common law is violated, then no matter which A offers, B accepts, and consideration has been exchanged, it cannot be fulfillment of a contract. So you need to know that when you're signing a contract, that you do not violate any of the common laws. That means, what are the common laws? Common laws, which we'll see in the next slide. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Sorry. Some of the common laws could be, it can violate the some of the federal legislations. Okay, in India, you will call it central government or state government legislations. So consumer acts. Okay, if it violates an act which is a common to everyone, your specific contract cannot be a contract anymore because it violates the law of the land. Similarly, the contractors do have other legislations. In Australia, we have a Corporation Act. In India, you will have similar laws. There are Fair Work Act. That means, what is a fair work? That means if your employer levered the minimum wage, whatever that minimum wage in Australia, suppose as of today it's $18 an hour. If you don't pay $18 an hour, if even if your contract says that I'm going to give you $10 an hour, that's an invalid contract. Though A has offered $10 and the B has accepted $10 an hour, it is an invalid contract because it violates the common law. Okay, so therefore you have to understand the obligations of a contractor and the obligations as against the state or the federal law, or in India the state and the central government laws. You will work within that. Once you understood the legal aspects of the contract, then you are ready to actually understand how to create a contract and how to sign a contract, which is your job. So let's see the next one. So the next one, in creating a contract, remember you're not a lawyer, you will never be a lawyer. You don't want to be a lawyer. So therefore you will take help of a legal professional. Normally in your company, there will be a legal profession, or you will hire a lawyer from external sources who will create a contract for yourself. But yet there are two obligations, or the PM's responsibility, project management responsibility, which is in the slide. The two responsibilities that you need to give it to the lawyer is what is called the preamble part of a document called legal agreement. Preamble, I'll explain that to you. So preamble is the first section. And then the last section is called the schedule, or the schedule of work or the task. So these two the lawyer will not know. You have to give them these two. And therefore, after you have given these two, basically you fulfill the requirement to a lawyer to convert this requirement into a legally well-written document, which is the contract agreement. So what is the preamble? The preamble is basically nothing but the introductory paragraph of any contract, where it identifies the contract between which parties. Okay, you have to identify those parties, and we have to identify with valid identities. Then, of course, when do you need this agreement to start? Because you start too early, there may be some cost incurred on every day, every week, every month basis. So the date from which you want the agreement to start, you will give that to the legal professional. And you will also give when it should end, okay, and what is planned to be accomplished. So all these are put together, and an example could be this will be put into an agreement where it says this agreement is entered between, say, Awesome Landscape Private Limited, and who is a contractor, and for the supplies of the services to the company named your company, which is in this case a Cascade Peak Walkway project, and both the parties agree to perform their respective duties based on the schedule, task, and consideration amount that has to be paid, which are described in the detailed agreement as follows. Okay, so this part can be written on by the lawyer only when you give the preamble to the lawyer, and that is your responsibility as a project manager. Then what is a schedule? The schedule is basically the terms and conditions, the scope of the contract, which are the schedule, because the lawyer will not know what terms and conditions you are comfortable with. You go to the lawyer, he will not tell you that, do you get a 30 days payment or a 6 months payment? You will say, no, my cash flow has to be, 30 days I want my payment in. Or if you're paying to someone, you can say I can pay only in 30 days and not in 7 days and not in 15 days. These details are the terms and conditions which you'll give it to the lawyer as a project manager, and based on, in costing we have seen a cash flow or a S curve. If you remember, there's a costing and S curve we learned. So you know what is your cash flow requirement, and you'll give this terms and conditions. And what are the scope of the contract? Scope of contract we have seen in the scope management, that you will deliver foundation, or you will deliver all the plumbing, you will deliver all the electrical, and then the details of this plumbing activity. That means there are 4 toilets, 1 kitchen, whatever, blah blah blah, you as a project manager knows. So therefore, now that we have learned that two task of a project manager is to give the preambles and the schedules, then we need to understand a little bit more about what are the preambles. And here I've given you some highlights which you can use as a quick template, that in the preamble you must say what are the general conditions of variations. Will you accept a variation or will you not accept a variation? You can say it's a lump sum contract, no variation. Okay, I've given you this lump sum, so the contract will say variation nil. Or you will say variation, I can go at maximum 5% of the project cost, I will allow for variation. That is an agreement. Tomorrow you should not come back as a supplier and say, no, I have overdone or underestimated, now give me a 20% variation. You will say, no, I have signed a contract. So these things you need to give to them. What is the warranty? Are you happy with a 6 months warranty, 1 year warranty, or you need a 5-year warranty after the supplier has supplied the goods? Okay, so if you want to terminate a contract, what are the clauses? Do you terminate in 1 day or in 1 month or in 3 months? Okay, so those are the details. Intellectual property. So if you're provided some intellectual property to the contractor, how will you protect the intellectual property? I gave you the example of Toyota giving original equipment manufacturing to, say, in India or in Australia, to a third party. So I've given all the designs, which is my proprietary designs, which makes my engine one of the best engine, long-lasting steam. Those are my intellectual property. So in the contract, I need to tell that person that you cannot do anything else. Okay, that's called restraint. If you see, that's called restraint. I'm restricting you to conduct any other business dealing with my engines. Okay, and then you will see in that what are the conflict of interests. Do that manufacturer have a conflict of interest, that they are not only manufacturing for you, they are manufacturing your competitor called Mitsubishi. So confidentially. So you will get sufficient ideas here to ponder over, to equip your lawyer with what are the clauses as a project manager you will provide in the contract that needs to be signed up by the other party. Only then the contract can be signed off. Okay, so therefore, though it is contract, writing a contract is a legal requirement, but really speaking, the heart of the contract is always created by the project manager. The essence of the contract is always thought by the project manager, and therefore you have to think through the legal implications and create those ones and give those inputs to the lawyer. In the schedule, I talked about the schedule, which is the last part, like an annexure. You will actually give the description of the scope that you want the contractor to deliver, by which time it should be delivered, by how much of cost can be incurred, what kind of quality you expect, can a subcontractor be included or excluded. So all these are part of the schedule. More details you write the schedule, less variation will come tomorrow. The problem most project managers make is that they give generalized idea about the scope, and then there are scopes within the scope, and the contractor comes back, sir, you have given me general, but this specific thing you did not specify. Now either there's a dispute or you have to pay more. So therefore, my suggestion to a project manager is always write the schedule in as great details as the task level. in the work breakdown structure, the task level. So that's what you will be doing. Now, once you have given the preamble and the schedule well thought of, then the last part is the administration or management of the contract, because the contract is signed, sealed, agreed by both the parties. Now implementation has started, so you're monitoring the contract. So in the procurement contract, what will you monitor? You will monitor all these things, to create the contract, negotiate, execute, all the compliances of the clauses in the contract. If there's any change request, if there is any renewal of contract, for example, the one contract got over, but you want to renew the contract because you have more work, okay? So you will be doing those ones as a project manager. And of course, at the end, you will be archiving. Now, monitoring will also means issuing and compliance of all the purchase orders, sales invoices, the contracts, the letter of engagement, the appointment of consultants, signing of the contract. These are also your requirements. So these are some of the bullet points for quick reference for you as a cheat sheet when you are involved into a procurement process. As I told you, contract administration and management is a 1 month course. But other than that, contract management administration is like a diploma of project management, is a full course itself. So therefore, I'm just giving you some key points for you to understand and appreciate the role and responsibilities of a project manager like you. And therefore, these slides will help you in terms of understanding and executing the contract. So the next slide, the last slide today, is there are certain conducts. There are certain conducts which are expected of you as a project manager during the procurement process. The two of the conducts, one is called a probity, another is the constraint. So you will have certain constraints and there are probities. Probity means basically ethical behaviors, okay, you abide by. So while you're executing a tender or selecting a process, you should not give the tender to your cousin or to your friend, to someone who has taken you for lunch or dinner or given you bribes. Okay, so that's why the concept of ethical behavior in the contract management comes, which says you have to behave honestly, appropriately, and with moral principles. And in evaluating, selecting, and recruiting project team members or project suppliers, project vendors, or project contractors, at all time, you will be behaving ethically and as per the policies and principles, and therefore you will not accept any gift or any gratuity, any hospitality, any benefits, or any bribes. Okay, this is the requirement you sign off as a project manager when you get involved into a procurement. So this is called probity. A probity clause is there, and you declare that I, as a project manager, give in writing that I will and I have acted in fairness with equal opportunity in complete ethical behavior, and I have not handicapped any vendor and favored any other, and that's how I behaved with probity and equity. The other one is the limit of the authority. Everyone has got limits of how much they can purchase. So a project manager will be given that, look, you can sign off maybe 100,000 or maybe 1 million worth of project procurement contracts. So therefore, at any point of time, you will not go beyond that and sign any agreement. Okay, if your limit is 100,000 or 1 million, you will only sign for 100,000 or 1 million. And anything which is more, then you will go to the next authority, your boss or someone else who has the authority. Now, in government contract, this is very important. When you work in government or in the corporations or in large organizations where millions and billions of dollars worth of contract is given, you have to be very careful to read your delegated authority. You will have someone given you a delegated authority as a project manager. You are allowed to spend only so much. Be extremely careful that when you're signing a contract, do not cross that limit, because if you cross that limit, two things happens. One is that contract gets invalid and a whole lot of complication comes up. And the second one is that you have actually jeopardized your own existence in the organization, because you might lose your job, you might be called for a code of conduct or investigation, and you don't want those things, because you have learned today in the procurement management plan for a project manager that you will look at the limits of your authority through a delegate authority signed and sealed piece of paper given to you. And only within the delegate authority you will operate for entire procurement operations. So those are the two conducts for a project manager for an overall conducting procurement operations. So therefore, what we have learned today, we have learned how to do the requirement analysis. What are the processes in procurement? Plan, action, the tender, administration, management, and close. Then activities in the planning stage: decide, make or buy, select the source, write a project management plan. Then we have learned today, during the implementation of the procurement activities, you will create a contract. Then also you will, during monitoring, you will administer the contract management. And then we also learned as the end, that is when you complete the procurement process, everything which is there in the inventory, you need to salvage those ones, get some money back. No dispute should be there. You will close all the claims and outstandings and make sure everything is archived. Make sure the people go back to where they came from, or at least you tell them. So that's how you close. And then lastly, we have also learned the two very important: conduct of a project management, conduct within the limit, and conduct with probity. So with this, I will end today's topic, and then I'll take the question answer, and maybe we can stop the recording now and move into the question answer.